Hello, welcome to the latest episode of Good Enough Chats. My name's Dan Bauscher, and today I am joined by Jon, who I will ask to introduce himself very shortly. But before I do that, I just wanted to quickly explain what Good Enough Chats is and how it works for the benefit of anybody that's not seen one of these episodes before. So essentially, these conversations are about trying to destigmatize men's mental health issues. And they are structured around five questions that each guest sees before, well in advance of the conversation. So Jon knows what questions are coming. And that is as much as anything to bring the conversation some structure, but also to help him have some degree of psychological safety going into this conversation. Because quite frankly, these conversations can be difficult for some people to have. So that's all really important. Now, that said, I don't know what Jon's answers are going to be. And he's almost certainly going to say things that are going to provoke other questions as we go along the line. And if he does, and we take the conversation in a tangent, and at any point in time he doesn't feel comfortable talking about a particular subject, all he's got to do is tell me, Dan, I'd like to get back on track, and we'll revert back to the five question structure. So he's in control of the conversation at all times and is not forced into talking about things that he doesn't feel comfortable talking about. So, with all that said and done, Jon, please could you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hello, everybody. My name is Jon. I'm a freelance B2B copywriter, technical author, ghostwriter, and erstwhile video producer as well. Lots of different hats in the business. But yes, I communicate things for businesses with complex propositions in a way that is engaging and hopefully gets them, sales and all of that stuff. Outside of the work, I am a father of two, which will feature fairly prominently in the story. And I work in a shed at the bottom of my garden, which is, yes, it's the dream, the dream. And I'm in the Scouts, which is the blanket behind me, which Dan.
I was going to ask. Tell us about the blanket. What's the story behind that ornate beauty?
This is a campfire blanket. And it started when I was 8 in the Cubs, and my mother started it for me because I was 8 and did not want to sew. And it looked pretty empty and tatty until I was about 22 at uni, and I was in the Scouts and Guides there, traveling around a lot to different campsites and things, and getting badges, as souvenirs. And that's where it's sort of grown up from, really. And it's very warm. It's very heavy now, but that makes it all the warmer. Around the edge, it's got various neckerchiefs you can see that I've got from other groups, bits and bobs. It's got a hood, all the bells and whistles.
I at some point I not now, but I need to see that modelled with the hood engaged on it as well.
Well, yes, don't worry. I can do a viewing.
Like a superhero or something. That's what I'm envisaging. Scout man. Awesome. Thank you, Jon. Okay, let's jump straight into question one then. What is it that's got you here today talking about your lived experience of mental health? What's got you to this point?
Yes, well, partially it's because I saw you on LinkedIn, and any excuse for a platform, right? To talk. As you may have guessed, quite enjoy talking. But also, so my experience is about mental health during the perinatal period, so before, during, after birth of children, and it's an area that's talked about a lot, certainly a lot with regards to women's mental health for obvious reasons, but men's mental health in that area is not particularly discussed, and that for me is problematic. I have no idea what to do about it because, other than throw billions more at the NHS, but that's not really my call. But I can't be, and I know I'm not the only person who's gone through this sort of stuff. So talking about it, as you said, Dan, destigmatizing it feels important and right to do.
Yeah, you're right. I don't recall, and when we had our pre-recording chat, I don't recall ever having a conversation with a friend, a male friend, about the impact of having kids on their mental health. Not
Yeah.
so directly.
Well, and it is a generational thing to an extent. Of course, that's a very blanket statement to say, but in my grandparents' generation, even my parents' generation, to a certain extent, the dads went to work and the mum stayed home and raised the kids, and that was fine. Everyone was happy with it. Certainly, in my family, there were no objections. My mum actually worked as well. So I think we were outsourced for periods of time to a childminder, which was great. I think she's still alive. We have very fond memories of it anyway. But there were more traditional roles around who's raising the kids, who's got what responsibilities. As those are starting to shift, and more men are interested in being present during those early years, taking on more role, being more supportive. They're kind of being exposed to more of the difficulties and the trials and tribulations that mothers have faced around throughout time. And I guess as well, for more and more, if there's one thing that having kids has taught me, is that society is fundamentally not equipped to help you raise a child anymore. It is one of the hardest things you can do, I think, in modern society, is raise a child. If nothing else, because I don't know anybody who can afford to have just one parent working. Both parents need to work, and that puts extraordinary pressures on those sorts of family units. And the way the sort of pregnancy, birth, and very early days are handled as well, is it puts pressure on people, and that gets people bent out of shape, including me. So it may be a problem that is becoming more prevalent as more men sort of become more involved. And obviously, if you want to keep men involved in that sort of phase of life, which is absolutely, I think, the right thing to do, is to give people that opportunity. But it means that we need to be talking about how do you look after yourself in that phase of life. Shall I give you the potted history?
Let's come to that in a short while. That's question 3, I think, for
Okay.
that one. But I think, having heard your um your helicopter view, if you like, of mental health, how have you been over the last week?
Yes, busy this last week. So my children are now 4 and 2. So some of this stuff is now quite a long way in the past. Thank the Lord. So I've got one who's in reception now, and my youngest has just started preschool 2 afternoons a week, because that was all that I pled with the school to give me anything before September, which is when she was due to start. But we've been busy. My wife is well, she's about just coming up on 1 year into a new job. She's doing very well at it. She's rapidly rising up through the ranks, which is great, but that's putting pressures on her. She's got to work sometimes some pretty long hours, and she's doing stuff that's all quite new to her. So that's a sort of that's been busy for her. I've been in business development mode, because work has been a little slower than I would like. So that's been there in the background. And the kids, they're not really in the background, are they? They're not very good at that. But so my youngest is having an interesting phase of taking 3 hours sometimes to to get to sleep, and then waking up early and being grumpy. Eldest is not particularly enjoying that. She's also coming near to the end of her first year of school, so she's just knackered anyway. So in that sense, there's a lot going on, physically, mentally, that's a bit challenging. But also, we're having some lovely times, like the weekend. My wife and I managed to spend a whole morning tidying up the garden, with the children just sort of playing around in the background, and occasionally helping with some of the gardening. But 2 years ago, that was just not possible. They just could not be left. They couldn't entertain themselves for long enough for that to even be possible. So that was really nice, actually, to sort of do that and go, this is so much easier than the last time we tried it, isn't it? I also took my eldest climbing. We're getting into that, which is great, but also quite tiring for her and me. So yeah, busy, but good bits, bad bits. All of life's rich tapestry, and I think that's one of the things that I think anyone's journey through mental health, at some point you've got to realize that nothing is ever completely all right, ever. You very rarely have a week where like nothing bad happened. This is great. My life is perfect in every way. There will always be challenges in some area. So learning how to cope with those, I mean, that's basically what looking after your mental health is learning how to cope with challenges before they become crises.
Yeah, and it's a phrase that or an example or an illustration. The words are failing me. I shouldn't have gone on such a long run this morning. Sorry, John.
That's all
But
right.
the thing that I've said in a couple of these chats is that it's about kind of looking at the frequency of your mood, isn't it? And if you've kind of gone for a phase where your mood has been incredibly low for a long period of time, you could kid yourself to thinking that actually you want to be back up here where it's really high. But life's not like that. And actually there's this kind of band in the middle of ups
Yeah,
and downs,
yeah,
which is kind of where contentment lies.
yeah,
And if you can kind of accept that that's what you need to focus on, not these
yeah,
amazing highs all the time,
yeah. No,
it
exactly.
helps enormously.
Exactly. And a large part of my story is around cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
Yeah,
I found it hugely helpful. And a big part of it is about understanding your moods and what's causing them. So when you've been low or down for a while, it's being able to say, okay, well, why am I feeling this way? What triggered it? And sometimes just doing that is enough to lift you back up out of it.
yeah,
Um, if not, you can usually go from there and work out, well, what am I going to do differently to feel better?
yeah, yeah. How am I going to manage my response to whatever that was that
Exactly.
caused that to happen?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Okay, let's delve into that a little bit more then.
Mhm.
So your potted history, your relationship with your mental health. Can you can you talk me through where things started, where you became aware that there were problems, and
Yeah,
how that has changed over time?
definitely. So it all started when a man and a woman loved each other very much and made a baby. And my wife's first birth experience, as many first birth experiences are, was a horror story. It was, I think she was in labor for 4 days in the end. The birth plan, just everything we wanted on it was no, that won't happen, no, that won't happen, no, that won't happen. Um, in the end, she was my eldest was delivered by a forceps, which was like the one thing we said, go forceps on the birth thing. But it's the way it goes, right? These things happen. So that was pretty upsetting for both of us, and of course exhausting. So then you've got this newborn thing handed to you, and they say, "All right, bye, off you go." No one even checks you strap them in right into the car seat. It's nuts. Um, and then you're at home, and you've suddenly got to cope with this child, and of course everyone wants to come and see you, which is tiring. But they're your parents, so you can't really say no.
Yep.
And you know that all we cracked. And my wife especially, she struggled mightily with her with postnatal depression and anxiety. And It was grim. It was really grim. But she got help. There were, the perinatal mental health team swooped in and did a great job, and helped her. She was on medication. She did some CBT herself. She didn't find it helpful. But she went through a process and recovered. Um, and I just sort of stood on the sidelines, very glad that she'd recovered. Sort of, just feeling a bit fragile. Then baby number two came along, and very different experience. Anyone who's had more than one child will, I'm sure, have hopefully will have similar stories. But of course, because you know what's coming throughout the whole thing, pregnancy, birth, afterwards, it's much less stressful. You know what's going on. You make more informed decisions. For the birth, my wife said, "Jesus Christ, I'll have a cesarean. Thank you very much." Absolutely, no, absolutely not doing that again. So the whole process was totally different, and as a result, my wife was um, much better, much happier, much healthier. There were some moments, of course, some challenging moments, but broadly speaking, she was second time around, she was fine. I wasn't. I found myself getting extremely stressed. Um, with very little reason, finding it very difficult to de-stress. And eventually it was, we sat down and go, this can't go on. This isn't right. And I joined talking therapies in Berkshire, where I live. So I did that. It was remote at the time, so I can't remember exactly where we were with lockdowns. But if we weren't still in lockdown, we'd come out of it when the world had woken up to remote services anyway. So I did that, and I did a course of CBT on an app called SilverCloud, which I found it enormously helpful. Helped me to process why I was feeling the way I was feeling, and a lot of it was connected to that trauma from the first time round. I was sort of, I was braced for an impact that wasn't coming, if you like. I was expecting a bad time. It wasn't really happening, but because I was still braced for it, I was, my emotions were on a bit of a hair trigger. So the moment something didn't go quite right, my brain would leap into crisis management mode, and that would take me a long time to come back down from. So once CBT started to help me understand that and help me connect why I was feeling, what was making me feel that way, what was triggering me, I was able to then do stuff to calm down. And these days I am much calmer, which is good. Not perfect. There are still things that, like just last week, there was something that I unexpectedly found quite triggering. But as a result of the skills and the sort of the what's the word, the kind of ethos of CBT, I was able to kind of actually sit down and think through it and go, oh, okay, that's why that's happened, and then talk about it with my wife and move through it. So yeah, that's the story from here to now, I guess.
A couple of questions. First one is the app, because of lockdown, obviously doing that virtually. What kind of model did that use? Were you talking to people? Was it all text-based? Were you actually having video calls? Was it like automated? How did that work? Because I think that would be useful for people to understand, I guess, different ways of receiving CBT.
Of course. And I don't know how they deliver the service these days, but I suspect it's still the same. So SilverCloud is an app that essentially walks you through the CBT process, and it has activities you can do, and it's got a space for you to keep a journal of your thoughts, your emotions, how you're feeling this day, which helps you spot patterns, right? If you, I stopped keeping a regular diary, but for a good month or two, I kept a regular diary, and I could say, oh, look, I'm feeling every Monday, I'm feeling bad, or whatever it was, or and that was useful to spot. And every 3 weeks or so, I would have a call with a therapist. Honestly, I didn't get loads out of those calls, but I think that's because the role of those calls is to help you think through what you're seeing. But I've always been fairly given to introspection and thinking about what I'm thinking and why I'm thinking it anyway. So that, and with that sort of natural tendency, and the app was, I was fairly self-sustaining. But I can see, if you're not someone who's used to thinking deeply about why they're feeling a certain way, having that call with the therapist would be hugely helpful, because that's what they help you unpack. And that was how it went. And honestly, I mean, even in today's fully free to move around and not wear a mask world, I would be quite happy to do it that way again. I think they, at some point, they have offered group sessions to people. But I say you'd have to, well, obviously, depending on where you are in your area, you'd have to go and check what kind of therapies they offer. Your GP is obviously the place to start with all these things. They'll know what's available in your area.
The second question is, as you were going through that kind of journaling experience, and I know some of our previous guests have talked about the how important journaling has been for them, and I think they've kind of embraced the sort of as an ongoing concern. What were you able to understand? What kind of things were triggering you, that were kind of lowering your mood or causing you more anxiety?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting. I can't think of too many examples off the from that time period. But it would be, it would, yeah, because in the app you'd always go, oh, I want to write this down in the app. But, the moment you felt something and you capture the notes in that moment, that's quite handy. I mean, not always, of course, because sometimes you're like, oh, I'm stressed because the babies just shit themselves everywhere, and it's not really the time
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get your phone and start making notes. But as soon afterwards as is feasible, I would try and go make some notes, and it would, yeah, that was hugely helpful. I replaced that in the end with just talking to my wife. Recommend it. Not well, talk to my wife if you like, but talk to your own if you've got one. Um, um, you know, for me, the power of journaling is getting things out of your head into another space where you can look at them, whether that's on paper or into the ears of someone near you who can then parrot that back to you and or give you an opinion on it. But for me, both kind of fulfill a similar role. Um, yeah, I mean, it was always things having a plan and it not going to and the things not panning out that way. And that's still something I find quite stressful, which is a bit ironic because I live in a freelance world where nothing really goes to plan. So Lord knows how I remain in any state of calm.
But I guess
Yeah,
by the same token, in that with you being a freelancer, I guess it puts even more importance. I could see how it would put even more importance on when something does come up that you have a plan, and it's really, really important that that plan works out, because that you don't always get these chances, right?
yeah. Well, I have to say I've built my entire working life around being able to parent how I want to parent, and I've been very fortunate that my clients have been very supportive of that sort of stuff. Like, whenever I've had rough patches, I have emailed them and said, look, just going through something here for a bit, might be off the radar for a few days while I, go and recharge or whatever. And no one has ever been anything other than supportive and kind and understanding. And it's never really impacted the work. So well, on the one hand, I'm lucky, but on the other hand, I've chosen my clients quite carefully and built my business the way I've chosen. It is what you'd call a lifestyle business. It exists to support the lifestyle that I have, which is being my wife is really the career person, so it's giving her as much room as she needs to, as much as I can offer her to do her, have her career, be do the parenting bit as much as we can and save money on childcare because that's expensive, and just kind of fun. I did before I went freelance, I did some coaching, to sort of work out my purpose and what I wanted to do, and and I would quite happily be a stay-at-home dad, house husband, if the finances would allow. I don't know. It's I enjoy the work I do. I have a nice time with it, but I do it to have enough money to go and do the other things. And that really changed my outlook on how I would work. And it was why I went to freelance, because that's the maximum reward for minimum effort, because you can set your rate, you fill up enough work to get what you need, and then you can stop. And no one's there insisting that you're present at a specific time. Well, sometimes for calls, but you don't have to be at your desk 8 till 5 or whatever it is. You work the hours you want, so it's never been a problem going to pick up the children or taking them to school, or popping in to feed them lunch, or whatever it is, and that's been hugely helpful. Obviously not available to everyone, because people are in different scenarios, but um, you know, it's a piece of the puzzle is working out what about your life you can build to make your reduce your triggers and stresses. Because when my first job was born, I was full time in an office. And there were a few occasions where I had to race home because I thought there was some crisis unfolding. I think sometimes there was, sometimes there wasn't. But being in the office meant I was always removed from it, and that was always a stressor. So being around at home for those, in these early years when they're small, took all of that away.
Yeah,
So
that's
I've taught
something I
myself
wish
into a hole now.
that's something I wish that with hindsight I'd kind of realized sooner in my own experience, because my kids are quite a bit older than yours. Got a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old turning 15 and 13 this year, this summer.
Whoa.
And I was working in a corporate environment, high pressure, long hours, and I missed huge amounts of their formative years. I wouldn't be unusual for me to leave the house before they got up in the morning and to get back after they'd gone to bed. And
Yeah.
that's working for a company that was a 15-minute bus ride away from my house. So you're not even accounting for a massive commute for most of that time either. So I have a lot of admiration for the fact that you've clocked that you have set out your stall and you've been able to do that at an early point in their lives, because it makes a huge amount of difference.
Well, I
Um,
may not have done it if not for how difficult that first birth was.
mm,
Um, I mean, as it also coincided with me being made redundant, but I was looking for other jobs, and then my wife got pregnant with our second, and I was freelancing on the side that was going quite well, and we just we sat down and thought, I really don't want to do that again. Like, let's just change the rules of the game here for a moment, and you know I was told at the time. I asked the manager. I said, "Do you think I can make it freelance?" When I was being let go, and she said, "I think you need to do some more full-time jobs first." Um, but 4 years later, I haven't starved to death, and I had two leads come in this morning. Very exciting. Um, you know, so it's sometimes more possible than you think. I think is what I'm
mm,
saying. It's even if you do feel trapped in that office job, um, not everyone wants to leave an office job either. To be fair, it's about
no,
building the
no,
life you want. But if you feel trapped there and you don't want to do it, um, it is possible. So, or at least it is often more possible than other people would have you believe. Is
yeah,
what I would say.
uh, and I can vouch for that as somebody who turned to freelancing out of necessity 5.5 years ago without any plan or intention to do so, and is still working
Yeah,
in the corner of his garden, choosing his clients,
yeah,
and balancing the need to bring a certain amount of money in with the need to actually have the flexibility, the freedom to prioritize the things that matter most to you. So
yeah.
I am a coach for my youngest daughter's football team,
Oh,
for
nice.
example. I would never have been able to do that if I was still in the job that I was in six
Yeah,
years ago. Just wouldn't have had the time, wouldn't have been able
I
to
think.
make the commitment to it.
Yeah, this is what I mean when I say you said earlier that society is not built to support you having children. Like the traditional office job, you can't. Like you said, you can't. You left before they were awake. You get there after the home. There's a possibly apocryphal story from our family. For a long time, my dad was known as the nice man who came to tea because that's all we ever saw of him. We might see, he'd come for tea, we'd go to bed, and then we wouldn't see him again until next tea time because he was up and out that early. Um, and if that person who's out working all day has enough income to support two people, and the person who's left at home has is content with their life looking after the kids and filling in whatever else they can around that, um great. But not everyone is, especially these days.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to just decide, well, I'm going to go and work for myself, and not work however long it is, and I'll take Tuesday afternoons off to coach football or whatever it is. Um, it's not, it's not as easy to do that as it should be. I don't think for people in
No,
their mind.
I agree, and I also think another one of the driving factors is um, for people feeling like they want to do that is that, um, speaking from personal experience, my wife stopped working for a number of years when we had the kids.
Mm,
But she was working from home before we had the kids, and she carried on working from home afterwards. So she's always been able to have that flexibility and exercise that flexibility that I didn't have until I went freelance.
yeah,
But I I felt quite a strong sense of detachment from family life when I wasn't here, because I
mm,
didn't know what my role was other than bringing the money in, because the kids were happy, they were
yeah,
going to school, my wife was happy, they
yeah,
were all happy as Larry, but I didn't I didn't feel like I was playing an active role in making any of that happen. apart from
Yeah.
bringing the money in. That's completely changed by changing my sort of career path. And, every day, one of us takes the kids to school, one of us collects them. One
Yeah.
of us walks the dog in the morning, one of us walks the dog in the afternoon. Do football coaching on a Wednesday evening, do
And
football matches on a
how
Saturday.
nice is that, you know?
How much better?
Yeah. So much
Yeah.
better.
Um, and it helps that we don't want a massive house. We don't want new cars. We're not into like buying the latest, greatest gadgets and stuff like that. Because if we were, you would automatically be putting yourself under more pressure to bring more money in.
Mm.
And that works for some people, but it doesn't work for others. And it's
Well,
not a
exactly.
priority for us.
And conversely, you know, if my wife and I were motivated by it, or want to have a Mercedes, or I want to move into a 5-bed house in 3 years, this would be hugely stressful because I'm not getting there. I'm not bringing in enough money to do that. So
Yeah.
we would change our lifestyle entirely, and one of us would go hell for leather making money. The other one would maybe stay at home, or we would get in. We'd really go hard on childcare and both get out there and work all hours. Um, I guess part of that sort of joy of CBT and that coaching that I was lucky enough to receive when I was made redundant is having taking the time to think about, well, what do I want, and what in my life is helping me with that and what is not helping me with that, and that was hugely beneficial to having enjoying good mental health.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Awesome. Thank you. So, question before then. Obviously, CBT, I think, has been clearly a bit of a revelation for you through this experience. But when you reflect back on the journey that you've been on, have there been any other sort of light bulb moments where you've kind of realized either shit, that's what the problem is, I need to address it, or that really worked for me, I need to find more ways to be doing these kind of things?
Um, yeah, there were. So one light bulb moment for me was um the first light bulb moment was understanding this is all because of that awful time we had before. That didn't properly click. It didn't properly click until I started thinking about why am I feeling this way, and realizing things like because you tell birth stories, don't you? When people ask how was the birth and whatever, and for years afterwards, I found it very hard to listen to my wife tell the story of how my first child got born. Um, there were there's bits in it, like someone pressed a button and suddenly they were in the room and suddenly like 15 people were in there, and gowns were being put on people, and it all got very real very fast because we had to go and have go into surgery for forceps and all this stuff. Like that sort of stuff would make me like my throat would close up. I'd feel like I was about to cry. Um, and it took me ages to realize that it was just because I hadn't let go, and still haven't to a certain degree let go of that memory and put it to bed and gone, okay, that happened and now I'm past it. Like there was just last week, we've got some friends they've got a newborn baby about, I don't know, 6 7 days old now. And they're they can't get the bloody thing to sleep. We've all been there, right? And my wife was messaging them on WhatsApp sharing our experiences, but she was telling me about this, and suddenly I could just feel this feeling rising up through me. Like I did not want to be anywhere near that conversation. And I got quite snippy. I was like, tell me about this. Um, and yeah, after about 10 minutes, took some breaths, calmed myself down, and thought through that. I thought, oh right, that's that again. I'm still not. That's still having an impact. That's interesting. And
Mm.
then told my wife that was the case, and she reminded me, we're all right now. I'm not ill. The children are fine. They don't cause many problems these days. But it was a reminder. I guess it was a reminder that it still needs dealing with it in some moment. And I guess that's another light bulb moment, is like we've said before, like you don't get to perfect. I was about to say you don't get back to perfect. But that's part of the problem, right? I think when you've been unwell mentally, sometimes you get this fantasy that, there was a time in your life when nothing ever bothered you. Um, and possibly when you were a baby, maybe. But even as well, we self-edit our memories, right? It's I think it's a relatively well documented phenomenon. People edit their memories, unconsciously, but you tend to forget some of the bad stuff that happens. You remember some of the better stuff. Sometimes you focus on the bad stuff, but the point is your recollection of your childhood is not the full picture. So if you think, and like a lot of people think about it at uni as well, uni was the best time of my life, I was happiest there. But you forget all the anguish of exams, or you forget the heartbreak you might have experienced with I don't know, a partner, or you forget throwing your guts up in a toilet and feeling awful the next day. Like some of those things just go away. So this idea that you can get back to being happy is a bit of a falsehood. We're all juggling with ups and downs every day of our lives. And that's, like you said, finding that middle period of contentment. That's the goal. That's a bit of a light bulb moment. Sleep was another one. Having a
Yeah.
rest. Oh my God. Just going to bed on fucking time. And we're in a really bad pattern with that in the minute. As I said, we keep not going to bed till like 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then reading. That needs to come back by like an hour, because it just, once you've slept well, you wake up and you feel like you're walking on air. Like, I float around the kitchen, making a cup of tea, feeling great, thinking, why am I feeling so great? And then I remember it's because I've had like proper 8 hours of sleep early as well. Those are sort of light bulb moments.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's a light bulb moment I could do with having probably every 2 or 3
yeah,
weeks.
right.
Just that, oh, sleep. Yeah, that's the thing that you haven't
Yeah,
been doing
yeah,
properly.
yeah, yeah. If you're ever feeling low, first thing to try is just go to bed earlier.
Yeah.
You know, Go to bed, have a big sleep, see if that helps. And chances are it will.
Mm.
One of the other light bulb moments I had, it's not quite the same as the others, but it's sort of quite specific to this, um, the sort of perinatal mental health issue, is that no one, especially when it comes to men, no one's really going to talk to you about it unless you talk to them first. Certainly, in the profession, I remember, I don't know if maybe you felt the same if you went to scans and that sort of stuff. But from the whole pregnancy and afterbirth period, first off, the mother is the patient, and then afterwards it's the baby as the patient, the object of whatever appointments they are, um, and the father is often very much the bystander. I often felt like with the scans, I often felt if I didn't move quick enough, they'd shut the door on me. They'd hold it open for my wife, and then I'd get in just as it's closing, sneak in, and they, sometimes my wife had to introduce me. They'd be like, "Oh, so how are you doing? Who are you?" She'd be like, "Georgia," and they say, "Oh, good, good, good." And this is my husband, John. Oh, yeah, all right, mate. Yeah, whatever. And I, it's not a. I don't want people to take away from this that, women get too much attention in mental health, because frankly they don't either. It took us long enough to get my wife seen and get her the right support when she was struggling. Because there's all sorts of things, like day 3, your milk comes in and your hormones go crazy. So if you're feeling down, people will go, "Don't worry, it's just your hormones, love." So you have to tough it out for another 2 weeks before people go, "Okay, maybe it's not your hormones now, maybe it's something else." There's all of that going on for women, and that's hard enough. Um, but of course, with your health visitors come in, they check the baby, they will ask mum how she's doing. They won't ask dads. I think very rarely. I think someone might have said to me, like, "You doing okay?" And I'd be like, "Well, sort of." And they go, "Oh, it's hard, isn't it?" And then that was it. And it's not a criticism of the NHS practitioners or anything. It's a reflection of resources. If in that scenario, if you've only got limited time and budget, you're going to support the baby and the mother. And it's all I get, but it's also just a reflection of the culture, and what I think gets forgotten about, especially if your partner has gone through postnatal depression, anxiety. That shit is rough, man. Like, she was, if you've ever, I remember looking into her eyes, and she wasn't home. She wasn't there. I don't know who was, but she was, she was not in control. She was not herself, and that's terrifying. That is terrifying to see in someone you love. Um, Lord knows what her parents must have thought. They probably felt much the same. It was very difficult for them because they were active and involved in that whole process too. Um, but they didn't then have to. We would stay at their house for a bit, then we'd go home, and it would be back on me. You know, being there, trying to, I was trying to do all as much as possible to take the load off so she could recover. So, I'd be, trying to get up for feeds once we'd switched to bottles. I'd be, holding the baby every moment I could. But then worrying that, I wasn't letting them bond, because that was another thing for, in that whole process is, women are told, oh, you'll feel a bond with your baby. The baby's born. Oh, and most of them don't, right? Like, it's you just push this thing out of you the size of a fucking grapefruit, and they go, "That's yours now, love it." And a lot of people
Yeah.
go, "What? I can't. I hurt so much, and I'm so tired, and it's covered in grease and blood, and doesn't look like a person yet." And for the first 6 months, a baby is just a fleshy handbag, or like a fleshy boppy. Feed it,
Mm.
rock it, burp it, change it. You just go through the motions with it until it learns to smile. And I remember a moment. My wife reminded me of the moment. So she said, "I remember you saying to me, John." She said, "I can tell." I said to her, "I can tell you're feeling better and improving because you're using her name more. You're referring to the baby as Ariete as her name rather than the baby." But you go through that whole journey with them. Well, if you want to be involved in it, you do. As I did. You're there, and it's. I remember talking to the therapy team at the beginning of my journey. And then we're like, going, "Oh, so what's up? What's up with you then? What's going on?" And I said, I think this might be. I said I think it might be post-traumatic stress because it all keeps coming back to this experience we had. And they said, "Well, you didn't say you're having flashbacks, so I'm not sure I don't think it's post-traumatic stress." And at the time I thought, what? I mean,
Binary.
I didn't question it because they're the experts, right? They should know. But I did think that seems weird. I'm telling you that I'm very much keep going back to these moments and living them, in my head. It's not a flashback. I wouldn't have called that, but um, the memory is painful and it keep every time I think about it, it hurts. That feels post traumatic to me,
Mm.
surely, right? But no, it wasn't. And this is in the same way that so many areas of medicine for women are vastly poorly understood. I think this is an area that in mental health, especially for men, is not understood, not given much thought, not given much training. I don't think mental health practitioners are trained in that sort of stuff, in what this might, in what the sort of perinatal period might do for men, or do to men. And so their ability to help is limited. So you've got to advocate for it a bit. You have to sort of push. And I would say I went to my GP and said, this isn't quite right. And in the end, they gave me the CBT course. But even that, I remember, it's got in it various stories from people who've gone through the app, and you can hear their experiences. And they're all, well, not all but one of them are new mothers, which is fine. The course is for mums and dads. That's fine. But there are also people with their first kids. As a second-time father, I was not at all represented on that course. None of these stories are about me. There was one part-time dad, and it was not part-time, sorry, first-time dad, and he was, his symptoms are very serious, similar to mine. So I felt a bit of, kind of kinship with him as these stories popped up and as you progress through the app. But he didn't really get much better. And they have these little, you're scrolling through the app and they said, "Now it's time for a story from one of the people," and they'd have a little profile picture of them. And all the women, they were sort of smiling and they looked like they were in a happier place now. The dad, he had this sort of like, kind of slightly lost look in his eyes on his little profile picture. And his story, he started with, he's feeling really bad. He went through the tools, he found them useful. And then at the end of it, he doesn't feel quite so bad on some days now. That was it. And I was like, is this all I've got to look forward to? Just feeling slightly less shit sometimes? So the way it was built didn't feel terribly reassuring or representative of my experience, which is again partly why I'm here, because get more experiences out there. So once I'd realized this, I thought, okay, well, it'd be useful to talk about this to more people, to my friends, and on more podcasts like this, but also recognizing that if you are in that position, as a father, that push at the right time, push for support. Don't let people fob you off.
Well, that is question 5 for us for this conversation. Is you're in somebody sees this, they're in a similar position to you. I mean, let's just say, for argument's sake, that push for support is one kind of thing that you would absolutely encourage them to do. But let's say, for argument's sake, that person doesn't feel like, they recognize something is wrong, but they don't feel like they've got the strength to push. Are there other things that they could be doing based on your experience that might be helpful for them?
I've got some. So, I mean, talk to your GP is always a good moment. Like, if they're, like, let's say you're the health visitor or whatever, if they're not interested, and they probably won't be, because they're not there for you. If they don't ask, they're probably not the person to ask. But talk to your GP, make an appointment for yourself about your health. Leave your wife and child at home if you need to, and just talk about you. That's one of the best ways to get support kicked off. Whether you engage with the support or not, some people I know have said that they're too clever for CBT, and they know what it's doing, so it doesn't work, which I think means they haven't really understood what it's doing. But that's a debate I don't need to get into. But whether or not you stick with that support or not, just opening the channels up will start the process, and it starts it in your own mind. Like, once you've made any doctor's appointment about any complaint you've got, it's now real, right? You can, like, all those bowel cancer adverts and stuff, where people, all these voice actors are just saying, oh, it's just a bit of blood, it doesn't matter. Once you've made the appointment, it does now matter, it's real. And that helps you give it space and importance in your own mind, which can help you start fixing it. So talk to your GP. Start to think about why and how you're feeling what you're feeling, because I say that was the breakthrough for me with CBT, was saying, okay, what happens to you is connected to what you think, is connected to how you feel, is connected to what happens to you, because of course once you're feeling bad, the choices you make affect what happens to you. So understanding those 3 things and their relationship starts to help you unpick why you're feeling a way that you're feeling. And I think especially with men, I don't think we're always taught to think about what we're feeling, especially older men, or why we're feeling it. And a lot of the frustration, I think, sometimes comes from just, I'm cross and I don't know why, I'm upset and I can't put my finger on it. If you can put your finger on it, it helps. Sometimes that is enough to make it go away. But start thinking about that. Start thinking about it when you're feeling good, as well as when you're feeling negative. Start thinking about, oh, I felt bad before. Why did that happen? Because when you're better, when you're feeling all right, it's easier to connect the dots. But also do it for why you're feeling happy. I'm feeling great today. Why? What can I replicate? Was it sleep? Probably it was sleep. Was it that I saw someone? Was it that I got half an hour to go for a walk? If you can, working out what makes you feel good is as important as working out what makes you feel bad, because then you can do more of the things that make you feel good. Communicate with your partner if you have one. My wife and I think, are 2 of the best communicators of any married couple that we know, because we've gone through stuff like this, and if you don't communicate, you will die. There's so many couples divorce when they've got small children, and can't pass judgment on what other people are going through, obviously, or speak in too broad generalities, but I do believe that if you communicate about what's going on, you can, it gives you so much more of a basis for fixing a relationship. And let's face it, if you go to couples counselling, that's all they're doing. They're just
Yeah.
facilitating you communicating with your partner. Um, if you can do that without a therapist, it's bloody cheaper. Tell you that. Although sometimes it is used if you're really at loggerheads, it can be useful to have an impartial third party. But especially if your partner is fine and you are not, they are sometimes just letting them know because they don't always spot it. Um, you know, some I'm not terribly good at masking how I feel. And my wife will go, "You've been an arsehole for 5 days. What's wrong?" But other people are much better at masking how they're feeling. And what you don't want to do is get trapped in a position where you're feeling bad, you're hiding it from everyone, but then you start resenting people because they're not helping you. You have to tell them, especially if you're hiding it, you have to tell them how you're feeling so that they can help you. And that certainly your partner almost certainly is one of the best placed people to help you with that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. And the last one, which I guess is specifically about when you've got small children, do your best, communicate with your partner to try and build in some alone time. Whether that's if you want time alone with your partner, if you're able to get a friend or a family member to watch your child for a day, a couple of hours, maybe even an overnight if you're lucky, or just time on your own. I know that lots of men struggle as well with their identity after the birth, especially if you're launching into this new world of being like, well, I'm an involved parent now. I've gone part time. I'm freelance because I'm working. I'm sort of being supportive of my family. And I see it on there's a dad's group influenced by. Have you watched Bluey? The TV
No,
show, because it's too old for it, I
that
suppose,
was
aren't they?
a bit too early. Yeah.
Watch it anyway. It's the best show on television, hands down. And there's a Facebook group for fans of the show, dads who are fans of the show, and we all sort of get together and talk about stuff. But the amount of men on there who are kind of going, "Who am I? I don't have any hobbies anymore. I don't see anyone anymore. I don't know how to start seeing anyone again." Um, you know, they don't build in enough time for themselves to go and try something new or do whatever. But building in time to just be on your own, even if it's doing nothing, right? Even if it's just sitting there in silence and letting your brain slow down, um, is hugely beneficial. Like, made me laugh the other day. I came in and I usually have music on when I'm working, and I've been feeling really stressed out. And I turned off my music, and the calm that descended on my brain was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I could not believe it. I was like, oh my God, I have room to think again. So I've really cut back in recent weeks on how much music and what music I listen to when I'm working because it fills up my brain, and other things will fill up other people's brains. But having time by yourself, even if it's doing nothing, is very restorative.
On that music point, very specifically, in the last 2 weeks, I've stopped playing Spotify through my laptop whilst I'm working,
Yeah.
because when you get to the end of the playlist or the album that you're listening to, it just carries on playing, and
Yeah.
you stop paying attention. It's just noise in the background. Um, I've fired this up again, which is a little CD player. And these
Ooh.
are all CDs here. These are
Oh,
the CDs of my youth.
yeah,
And
man.
I now have to physically get up, choose what album I want to play it, and then it stops. And then I have to get up and do the same thing again. And it's useful in a couple of ways. One, because it breaks things up. It's not just constantly playing in the background. So I'm giving myself a natural pause from whatever I'm doing. But two, um, it's also helped me to realize that I often, like you, need nothing in the background so that I
Yeah.
can actually focus on doing the thing that might actually be causing me a bit of stress from the work front at that particular point in time.
Yeah.
Just a bit of quiet time, go, okay, all of a sudden I'm starting to make some progress here that I've been struggling to make for the last hour when music was playing. So I've kind of become
Yeah.
more aware of the fact that that is both a blessing and a curse, to have
Yeah.
music on. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
the
No, no.
upside is sometimes it fires you up and it gives you the energy of like, okay, now I'm focused, I'm just motoring through stuff. But other times it's not. It's not going to do that for you.
Yeah. Now, in CBT and lots of these things, they'll recommend meditation or breathing exercises, and they are good. Taking deep breaths does feel quite good, actually, especially if you haven't been doing it for a while. But a lot of it, I think, is just about standing still for a moment and letting your brain slow down. It's just a computer. If it gets too busy, it will start to crash. You have to let it rest sometimes. Going for a walk around the block can make an enormous difference to how you feel about anything. And can, as you said, can unblock problems at work. But yeah, if you're if you're at home with small children, and you're thinking, Jesus Christ, I want to lock them in a room and just go away. Obviously don't throw them against a wall, don't lock them in a room. That's not okay. But just saying to your partner, look, when they get in the door, or when they're when there's a good moment, just say, look, I need to go out for 10 minutes. I need to go and walk around that block and just breathe. Can you just hold the fort for a second? I'll be back in a moment. Often, if your partner's not receptive to that, that's something to talk about. Maybe a therapy or couples counselling. But I've never actually found that my wife was unreceptive to that idea, unless she was also in the middle of a sort of a meltdown, in which case you do have to take turns sometimes. But we would, we got very good. We've coined the phrase from Bluey of I just need 20 minutes. I just need 20 minutes when no one comes near me. Whether you spend that in your bedroom, whether you go out for a walk, just say, it's like our safe word, almost a parenting safe word. I just need 20 minutes. The other person knows that means it's time to stop doing whatever you're doing and just corral the little people for a moment. We started, so do you need 20 minutes? Do you want to take 20 minutes? Like, I've had my 20 minutes. Do you want your 20 minutes? Like, it works well as a method of sharing that load and giving us both of you time to decompress and slow down and breathe and feel better.
Awesome. Jon, thank you. We've had our 5 questions. You have furnished us with loads of incredibly useful, tangible advice, sharing your experience about this along the way. It's been a really rich conversation, and I think anybody that has been experiencing similar feelings to what you've had will find this a really useful discussion to play back. But equally, some of the things that you said relate to, my experience of mental health is not the same as yours. It's not the same catalyst, but some of the things that you've discovered as part of your recovery, if you like, are equally applicable to the situations that I've been in as well. So I think there is a broader kind of value, potential use for this for other people who haven't necessarily gone through exactly the same sort of experience that you have. So thank you very much for taking the time out to share this story with us. Really, really appreciate it. If somebody sees this and they would like to talk to you about it, are they okay to contact you via LinkedIn?
Yes, yeah, that would be fine. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm sure I'll be tagged in the posts when this goes live. So yeah, no, I'm always happy to talk about this if someone wants to.
Awesome. Thank you. All that remains for me to say is thank you to you, the audience, for watching this conversation. As Jon has said, if you would like to pick up the conversation with him, you're more than welcome to. I'll put a link to his profile in the description on YouTube and also tag him in the post when this goes live. If you have seen this episode or other episodes and you feel like you could come forward and tell your story, share your lived experiences of mental health, please get in touch with me. All of my details will be in the post as well. This really can only continue if people carry on coming forward and are willing to open up and share their experiences. So we're always open to hearing from new people we don't know, people we do know, to get more involved in these conversations. So thank you again for watching this far, listening this far. We will be back again very soon with another episode of Good Enough Chats. Take care of yourselves in the meantime.